Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad that you're joining me for another episode of putting on the armor, the whole armor of God. And of course, we've done a few of these episodes already this month in an attempt to push back against the celebration of self, which is a very, very worldly celebration of celebrating what is right in our own eyes or in the world's eyes. And we see what that looks like today. And today, of course, we have a wonderful guest joining us today to kind of break some of this stuff down, and what it looks like in putting on the whole armor of God when we're dealing with such a month that celebrates that much sin all in your face and demands that you affirm it. And so we're going to be talking from a Christian perspective here and how we deal with this. And joining me today to talk about some of this wonderful stuff, of course, is one of my good friends, Alfonso Rachel. Thank you for joining me today.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Zoe, you've been around forever. You've been doing this for a long time. You've
internet terms, anyway.
Internet terms, yeah. Not as old as Methuselah, but but you've been doing this for a long time. You've discussed different topics involving culture, involving the putting our faith in the wrong stock. Thinking that we're going to be saved from some earthly man or some earthly institution, and we continue to stray further and further away from what is the real truth, the only truth that matters, and continuing to be caught up in a lot of stuff. And it's absolutely, devastating to see Christians continue to fall in this way. So before we kind of get into all of that stuff here today, just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about your testimony, and then we'll dive into today's episode.
All right. Hey man, I was just to backtrack a little bit, man. It's like I like the way you merged Methuselah and Medusa, and it brought to mind like this really old woman with a snake afro.
That's awesome.
So anyway, man, my I guess what is my backstory? Since I've been around forever, man, I guess I gotta like really dig back like in time and figure out how I got started with this stuff. Well, I'm a musician, man. That's I guess people could tell that by the toys I got in the background, and and a very secular musician at that, and just my whole worldview was secular, but I knew that music was a powerful means to move a message, and I was more conservative, even though being more secular, but I didn't really have the real meat to base that on. And long story short, in playing with different bands, I would find myself conflicted with the ideas that they would have, and we would end up having arguments about the worldview that we're trying to put out there. So I just decided, look, man, I'm just going to start doing some videos. This was like back in 2007, and I put these videos up on MySpace, kind of promoting these things that I had conflict with the liberal worldview. And those videos started to gain traction. And then not too long after that, I put them up on YouTube, and that started to go viral from YouTube. And then a little bit later on, I still with conservatism, I was more conservative, but what did I base it on? What did I really need? It has to have a basis. You got to conserve to something. It's got to have a basis. And that's where, the Christianity, the biblical aspect of it was the thing that I realized that, man, that's the foundation I have to build this on. In order for me to have this view, it has to have something that it rests on. And that's where the Bible came in.
Yeah, no, for sure. Resting on the ultimate truth, the only truth that should be guiding our lives. And unfortunately, a lot of times where people can be swept away, Christians and non-Christians can be swept away easily with smooth talkers and these promises and things like that. But right now we're in this spiritual warfare, and it just seems like it continues to intensify. And people like to write it off. Even Christians will write it off. Oh, that spiritual warfare talk or whatever. But that's one of the greatest deceits that I believe that Satan has been able to pull a wool over the eyes of so many Christians, and not to realize that we are truly in a spiritual warfare, a warfare that happens right there in your mind by allowing certain things to be put into your, that you allow to be put into yourself, by, taking in all this type of stuff that is not glorifying to God. Looking at Ephesians chapter 6, which I know you're very familiar with, in the armor of God, the first thing it tells us to do is to gird up our loins, to put the belt of truth on. And, what does that look like for today's Christian? What is the belt of truth? What would you equate that to?
That's I like the way you put that, man. It's what does that look like? That's a very important, important phrase, man. What does that look like? Because not only are we guarding from the attacks of the devil and the attacks of those who serve him, whether they serve him wittingly or unwittingly, we have to make sure that we're guarded against those who posture themselves as Christians. So when we say, what does that look like? You do have to have, it's basically we're in God's army. We're his military, right? We're his jury. As Paul says, do you not know that we will judge the angels? As our commission was from the beginning, it's like, look, your objective is to go through the world and subdue it. And we have to be guarded against those who are counterfeit Christians. And when the Lord is telling us to put on this battle dress, when we're in our uniform, man, we have to know absolutely what that uniform looks like. So like if you're in the military and you're dealing with somebody who's an imposter, you want to make sure that you're calling these people out. And Paul had to do that a lot. It's like, look, man, he's calling out people. It's like, look, man, you're not squared up with what the faith is. So we need to recognize, what your battle's like, from the wrong placement of your insignia, your tags, your T-shirt, your Irish pennants, anything like that, that may look out of place on a person's uniform. That's why they're very in particular. They study how their uniform is supposed to be placed on, right? How everything is supposed to fit and how everything comes together. So it's the same thing with our battle dress in this spiritual warfare. We have to examine and know when a person is speaking in truth, knowing that their breastplate, their helmet of salvation, all those things on, when people talk about whether something's going to be a salvational issue or what they think has gained them merit to be able to obtain salvation. It's like, look, man, your helmet ain't on straight. Your helmet ain't on straight and your head ain't on straight. That's that you're an imposter, right? Your breastplate, your belt, how your belt is and how your sword is situated and things like that. We should be able to recognize these people in our ranks. And it's not being judgmental or anything like that. The Bible tells us to be able to rebuke in kind. We have to iron has to sharpen iron. We have to know what these things look like so that we're not following and we're not enabling and we're not leading. Right? We have to examine ourselves too. We got to make sure that our uniform situation is on straight before we assume to try to edify somebody else, and assume to be edified by another person, assume to be some sort of spiritual leader in the ranks when they're really an imposter. So it's an important point that you made up, that you brought forward, Frank. Sorry, not made up, but brought forward in terms of what does that look like.
Yeah, and that's excellent. And you're right. Just by making sure our uniform is correct, how it's supposed to look. And you put it well, saying that, we're called into this military. And as in militaries, you look around world militaries and earthly militaries, they don't just sit around and do nothing. They're consistently drilling. They're consistently preparing for battle. That way, when they encounter a battle situation, it comes as second nature to them. It's muscle memory.
Yes.
And many times Christians are not battle ready. They're not. Many times we're lazy and idle, which we have not been called to be idle. We've been called to move forward. A soldier's purpose is to defend and to attack. And either of those statements is not an idle statement.
Right. Absolutely not. And also, if there's energy being expended, it's a lot of time into trying to put the energy into some sort of merit in seeming accepting, right? Like, so we're talking about this Pride Month, and I mean, dang man, pride is like the first sin. Pride is the first sin, but we're giving over to this pride, and there's the enabling and this so-called accepting. And where you have Christians are saying, who put all this energy in defending this falsehood that Jesus is all about love and acceptance and tolerance. And it's like, Jesus is about none of those things. And when Jesus made his sacrifice, he made his sacrifice as a soldier. He wasn't just, it was like basically the equivalent of throwing himself over a grenade to save our behinds, right? Or allowing himself to be taken prisoner so we could escape, right? So in doing that, this pride and this acceptance that people think that we're given over to and trying to say that Jesus was all about loving and accepting. It's like, no, when he made this sacrifice, if Jesus was all about being accepting, he'd have just stayed where he was. He would have stayed on. It's like, look, man, you guys are fine. Go ahead and do whatever it is that you're doing. Your sin is okay and all that sort of stuff. And you can go ahead and be a sexual deviant, and you can go ahead and turn yourself into an abomination, assuming that you can be a man who could become a woman and all that sort of stuff. And the church is thinking that, well, Jesus is okay with this because Jesus is all about love. And this is absolutely false. Just like we were saying about the uniform. It's like, look, man, your uniform ain't on straight. You are fighting the wrong battle here. You're on the wrong side and you're an imposter.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. A lot of people, real quick try to, especially the world that doesn't that doesn't recognize Christianity, wants to destroy Christianity from the face of the earth, will be the first ones to call out scripture to you and tell you, oh, well, Jesus sat with tax collectors and the harlots and stuff like that. and that's where they'll stop. They'll do that. So that way they'll silence you into submission. So that way you won't speak out against it anymore. But that's where you're supposed to speak up and say, he also said that you have to die to yourself in order to follow me.
Yes. And he also said that they were sick. It's like he sat at the table with sinners. Like, yeah, Jesus also called them sick. Right. And he says, don't go sinning anymore.
Right.
But overlook those things.
No, not at all. So speaking of June, as you mentioned it, we are in June, and of course the world is celebrating self and what is right in their own eyes. And everyone is being bombarded with this wanting to be affirmed through all kinds of social media advertisements and just every aspect of life. Schools, colleges, universities, everywhere is being bombarded. How does today's Christian guard against this onslaught, Zoe?
You got to get in that word, right? You got to open up. So when you're holding that word, man, you are holding the textual representation of the Lord himself. And when you read it, you can't just read it and base it on your own understanding. You have to have the counsel of the Holy Spirit when you read it. He is the author of it. You might want to consult with him. So it starts there. And that right there, in effect, is what's going to pull you away from the whole dynamic of pride in itself, because you have to be humble in order to do it. And as we said earlier, pride is the first sin, and we've made a month devoted to pride. So it's right there. It's going to start with that humility. The Lord tells us hey, you need to be self-controlled and you need to humble yourself. And to do that, you're going to need me for that. So it's a person just needs to, that becomes your lifestyle. As a matter of fact, it's your life.
Yeah, no, great point. And another point that someone else brought up that I was speaking with last week was what many times we see Christians do. They make excuses for not wanting to attend church. They all have all these lists of reasons for not wanting to, congregate with other like-minded individuals, other like-minded people who share your faith. I think it's more important than ever to make sure we're surrounding ourselves with those types of individuals. And of course, finding those mature individuals who have matured into faith to help mentor you if you are a young believer. And I don't mean by age, I mean by when you've come to the Lord, of where you are spiritually, and to be able to do that. Is that something that Christians right now, especially, as the onslaught continues, is that something that they should be looking to do more of?
Oh, definitely, man. Because hey, if for those who have any aversions or reservations of going to church, your instincts are correct, because church isn't some place that you go, right? The thing is, we are the church. We are the brick and mortar of the church, right? We are the place where the Lord dwells. So for y'all who are like, and I don't feel like I want to go to church. So people say that there's a bunch of hypocrites in church. Hey, well, as far as that goes, church always has room for one more hypocrite, right? So you're a hypocrite just like the rest of us. But the real thing is that the church house, okay, is really the appropriate term. This place where we gather, this place of assembly. The church is the people. And I'm not speaking out of my own understanding or some sort of metaphor or anything like that. No, the church is the people. A church house is just a place that we gather. But just like to your point, though, Frank, we need to be able to we are the Lord's army. We're not an army of one. Okay. We just don't go about this individually. We're his flock. All right. So there's supposed to be a community. When we say the church, when we say the ecclesia, it means a body, it's a population, right? We are his ecclesia. So yeah, you want to, and just like we're doing right now, we're having church. Okay. We are church. And those who are gathered in the audience, yeah, we church. And we want to make sure that we are girded up and we are ready to be mobilized, when the Lord gives us his marching orders. And we want to be able to make a community that is able to have a way to address what's going on in the culture and to do what we can to catalytically, in the Lord's order, affect culture without the culture affecting us.
Yeah, and that's so important. And that leads me right to my next question is, of course, some of our most vulnerable areas in our households are our young ones, our teenagers, our young kids who are being targeted purposely because,
we're coming for your children.
Exactly. They know there's a weakness there because the household has been weakened purposely. Has been weakened. And I don't, again, I'm going to pivot back to this. I don't think many Christians understand how vulnerable our households are. So as young believers this time in age, we have these young people who are Christian, who, profess Christ. How do they go about protecting themselves in this environment that is purposely targeted toward them?
Man, as a Gen Xer, I think one of the fatal things that we grew up with, I guess, that we passed on, to this generation right now, is the words "believe in yourself."
Yes.
Right. Believe in yourself. It's like it was more important that people were conditioned to believe in themselves more than believing in God. And that has turned in, and because these people believe in themselves so much, they've made idols of themselves. If you listen to all these trans people, their narrative, as far as they're concerned, they're fluid, they're this, they're that, and then, along with that, they claim themselves to be a god, right? They can transform themselves, and so that right there, even in the beginning. Not only does Satan come after your kids, which the Lord has a real big issue with, man. You know what he says? He say, hey, man, you be stumbling blocks these kids. It'd be better for you to have a millstone tied around your neck and tossed into the sea. So the Lord's pretty militant about this, right? But even before the devil came after the kids, the devil came after Eve, right? In a military fashion. And we could see, Frank, the feminization of the influence that woman is having over man by satanic design, by a satanic campaign. So you can see where the devil, because Eve was made to be Adam's ally. You break down the word of this helpmate that was for Adam, it breaks down to be ally, and it's speaking like in a military sense, as the Lord says, go forth in the world and subdue it.
Yes.
Right. So, but the devil came after her, who is going to be, the one who's going to be bearing children. Came after her, and even like the way he came after Job, and he came after his kids too, right? But came after Job, and when he came to inquire about Job, it was God's like basically saying, "Are you campaigning? Have you considered Job?" And it's like, "Are you campaigning? Do you have a military campaign against Job?" And Satan did come after Job and came after his family. So Satan comes after us in these things, and he's going to come after. Especially when it comes for the women and come for the children. Okay. And he's going to come after them in a way very deceitfully and make them think that what God has said is not really the truth, or that you can just go ahead and make up your own ideas of what God has said.
Yeah, that's been really been something that's been pushed a lot. I know, especially recently, is that they're basically telling people you can be your own God. Mm-hmm. You are your own God. You can, do whatever you want. You can, as you mentioned, you can transform yourself into the opposite gender. Yeah. And you'll be happy if you do that, which we know, statistically does not reflect that at all. And there's a reason for that. You are literally going against God's will.
Yeah.
I can't not see how you could be happy in that. And this is a hostile environment, and the environment's going to continue to get hostile. I mentioned this in a Bible study a couple mornings ago. I said if we're unable to stand right now with this amount of resistance that we're seeing right now, which isn't a lot compared to when you see what's happening in places like India and China and some of these other countries, Nigeria, where they're killing Christians for their faith, for standing up for their faith. If we can't stand up now, we're not going to be able to stand up when it gets hard. It's not hard yet, Zoe, but it is getting hard. It is increasingly becoming harder. But if we can't stand up right now, it's going to be even harder. So that leads me to my next question here is, with that being said, how does today's Christian present the gospel in a hostile environment that we are in right now?
And before I just want to say to your point about where America is going. I want folks to consider that, like in places like the northern aspect of Africa, and going into the Middle East and Indonesia and stuff like that, where these like in this area right here is speculated to where the Garden of Eden was, right?
Right.
Please consider, y'all, that's where paradise was. All right, that's where paradise was, and that place is in chaos now. So America, compared to like the rest of the world, that'd be kind of like paradise, what America was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So if y'all don't think that kind of chaos can't hit here, this is how it'll happen, man. When we're complacent about these things, and Frank, my memory is like that long, man. Can you refresh me on your question?
Absolutely.
Sometimes I go too deep, man, and my scuba gear can't get me back up, man. Let me pat myself on the back. I'm so deep. I'm so profound.
No, with the hostile environment, as you mentioned, as it is now, what would be your how would a Christian today be able to present the gospel effectively today?
Reflect on what the Lord says, man, with his parable concerning the deceitful manager who was squandering the owner's resources. Within that lesson, the Lord says, I need you to, the Lord teaches the lesson of doing what the children of the age do. Because the Lord is basically saying that the children of the light really don't know how to sell it. It's like, I mean, it's great that you're Christians and stuff like, and you want to follow the way and all that sort of stuff, but you don't really know how to sell it. I think a lot of times, people try to be so heavenly minded that there may be of no earthly good. That's a saying. It's not necessarily biblical, but the Lord is kind of saying like, look, I need you to be salt and light. I need you to be innovative. I need you to be effective. And there are things that you need to use that are within your contemporaries that you got to look at, see what the godless are doing. Like we see the liberals, we see where they are. They're in the biggest industries and institutions of influence, whether it be education, entertainment, right? Politics. That's where they are. And I think with Christians, they're not engaging in those areas and using the tools effectively, and taking a cue from what the children of the age, and the children of the age are typically your godless. They're the godless. They're the ones who are doing what they desire and what they think the world wants. This is what and every age is going to have a generation of that, right? So the Lord is like, look, I need you to do, and I need you to use what the children of the age are using. So get a hold of those tools. Don't use them for defiling purposes like they're using, but use the tools for my purposes. Use the kind of techniques, use the kind of formulas that they're using to be able to make effective vehicles and methods of being able to promote the gospel, where you can capture people's their attention, make it engaging to where it's like, okay, you got my attention. I want to listen, right? I want to watch. I want to listen. And that's what we need to be doing. That is the most effective way. That's what's been being used to pull us away from God. And now we need to use those tools to gravitate people back to God.
Yeah, no, that's right there. It, just wherever you look, it's promoting some type of anti-Christian, anti-God message out there. And not enough times there is enough pushback on it. We've been conditioned. I say we as Christians in general have been conditioned to not speak up in the public square. Oh, separation of church and state. You don't want to. No, I want a godly guy in politics. I want godly people in entertainment. I want godly people in these things. We've gone away so far away from just retreating. We've been in this retreat for way too long, Zoe.
Yeah.
And when you propose that we go, hey, we need these spheres of influence to have godly people in there. Whoa, you're too radical with that thinking.
Darn right.
You want to preserve kids? That's very radical.
No, right. And see, the thing is, Frank, just like you said, man, when they talk about separation of churches, man, these people who accuse us of that are the most religious among us. They're the worst offenders of being religious, right? We're having to live under they have violated the Constitution in terms of respecting the establishment of a religion. We have to live by their religion, and if we don't, there's going to be punitive measures.
Yeah,
right. They have done it. I mean, everything that they're doing is an act of false faith, but they have total faith in it, and we're being forced to live by it. And man, Frank, we have to be able to say, no, we're not a theocracy just because we're God-fearing and because we want a person who fears God to represent us in office and things like that. That does not make us a theocracy. Nobody's forcing you to believe in Jesus. Like, put a gun to your head and say, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to be arrested or you're going to be taxed to death, literally taxed to death. No, what it is, it's like, look, we have a right to not allow you to push your religion onto us. You guys are trying to push your religion on us, and all we're doing is saying, it's like, no, you can't do that. There's a balance of freedom here, and you guys are trying to tilt the whole thing in your favor. If I can remind folks, when we talk about liberty, and I still have to look this up, man, because I'm not an etymologist. I haven't really looked at the etymology of this, but when I hear the word liberty, I hear the word Libra in it. All right. And so there has to be, which means that there has to be a balance. You can't just shift liberty to be everything that you want. It can't come at the forced expense of somebody else, and you have to understand what true liberty is, because you may have a false idea of what liberty is, and you want to force everybody to abide by that, which is not liberty at all.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you bring an important point about the state religion, because we do have a state religion. If you don't know, all you have to do is look around and you'll see the flags flying high in front of our government buildings. That is the state's religion.
Yes.
And they are going to they are going to punish you if you don't bend the knee to the state religion. And so, it's important for us to understand that, for all those individuals that called out, you can't speak Jesus or you can't preach Jesus here, you can't talk about the Bible here. And we're only making way for them to be able to establish their religion as the predominant religion of the land. And that's what we have seen take place over the last few decades. It's been a working that's being fulfilled for a plan that was put in motion way long before I existed or Zoe existed. And so that brings me to my next point, Zoe. And I know a lot of times we can get into these areas that just seem like, again, do we have any hope? We're getting beat down over here. We got the state has their own religion. They got the state's police force enforcing that state religion on us, and they're doing everything they can to make your life miserable. Let me ask you this then. Do you have any encouraging words for Christians who are watching this right now?
Yeah, man, it's, these things are going to happen in nature, man. It's America itself, just like anything else that's in nature, everything's got a shelf life. So America's going to decay. And I don't say that as a cynic, man. I'm just saying that's just the law of nature. Things have a shelf life. And but at the same time, it's encouraging because the word has told us this. And as we draw deeper into this, and man, it's going to get ugly. It is. But we know that the Lord, he's written his promise to us in blood. Okay. He came back, he proved and said, look, man, I prepared a place for you. And so that place he's going to usher us into that place. So we know that that's happening. And more, these people are revealing that everything that the Lord has said is true by them trying to go against, right? Everything that they're trying to do, they're trying to go against what the Lord has said. Like, this whole transgender movement, this is against what the Lord has. This is like the first thing that the Lord has said about us from the beginning. You're a man, you're a woman. Okay. And now they're trying to go against this biological, spiritual truth and try to make a liar out of God, right? Adam named Eve the mother of the living. Well, now more and more, and this has always been people sacrificing their children, but you see now more and more, these women are celebrating not being the mothers of the living. They want to be the mothers of the dead. So they're constantly going against what the Lord has instituted from this beginning. And even with the rainbow flags, you know, it's pointed out, you know, a long time ago, man. It's like, look, those rainbow flags, just like you mentioned, it's like if you don't abide by this flag, you're going to be punished. Well, that's what that flag was supposed to represent in the first place. It was punishment. That covenant that the Lord made, say, look, yeah, I ain't gonna flood the world over anymore. Even though the liberals say that the world's gonna be flooded over again when God said it's not gonna be. See what I'm saying? They're always trying to go against what God said. But
very great point.
Right? Always trying to go against what he said. But that rainbow, when Lord made that covenant, there was something that led up to that rainbow. It was all the wickedness and the perversion where God said, okay, man, I gotta drown y'all, man. Y'all gotta go, right? So he puts that rainbow up there. This ain't gonna happen. The world's not gonna be flooded over. Matter of fact, because God is like, when I see them storm clouds gather, man, I'm gonna use that rainbow. I'm gonna see the dynamic of the rainbow. And it's gonna remind me to not kill y'all by the flood anymore, right? That's how irritating God gets with us, right? So, but now, Frank, we seeing them flags all over the place again. It's been for a little while now, right? And it's growing, right? The advent of the rainbow flag all over the place, basically letting us know that time. It's a snapshot to let people know, yeah, the Lord is coming back. They're flagging in mockery. They're flagging in God's judgment. And it says in the last days, it'll be like the days of Noah. Now, I don't know if these are like the last days that the Lord that the Lord is talking about when we talk about the day of the Lord, right? There's a judgment, there's a tribulation, there's rapture, things like that. And then there's also the day of the Lord. But we're getting a picture that the Lord wasn't kidding, that these days are going to mount up like that. And you don't want to be on the business end of the Lord when the day of the Lord comes and he brings that serious judgment, right? The big one, right? You don't want to be on the business end of that. So get that stuff straight now, folks.
Yeah, no, that reminds me of the verses in Matthew where Jesus is talking about, earthquakes are going to happen, the storms are going to happen, wars are going to happen, nation is going to rise against nation, but these are all just birth pains of my coming back. This is all part of leading up to, as you mentioned, to the day of the Lord where he returns. Mm-hmm. And let me go ahead and pivot because, we're talking, we talked about this hope. We talked about this wonderfulness within Christ, and if you're a Christian, that hope. I hope at least that hope, and that joy. But for those unbelievers that are watching though right now, and they'd have no idea what we're talking about, how we can still be hopeful in the face of what seems to be you should be fearful, but we're hopeful. Do you have a message for those people?
And once again, man, the hope is going to be in them pages. I would recommend if you're not a believer, and I sympathize because I wasn't always a believer either. Grab a Bible and read one chapter a day. Start from the beginning. They don't try to find something because a lot of times people, they fall out of the Bible because they look for things in the Bible that are pertaining to them. They're looking in the Bible for answers that reflect their life or something like that. You don't want to take that. I mean, I don't want to say you don't want to take that approach, but often at times that approach will leave people, disillusioned because they're trying to make it about them. It ain't about you. It ain't about me. It's about the Lord. That's what the Bible is about. The Bible is about the Lord, who is the living truth. He is the absolute truth. Truth is a persona. Truth is a living entity. Okay. And the Bible is that representation of that entity. So take it from the beginning, right? If you really want to be, get some gusto into it, take a chapter from the Old Testament and take a chapter from the New Testament every day without fail. Like I said, at least do one. If we want to read it from Genesis all the way through Revelation, do it like that. If you want to read Genesis and then Matthew and then just keep going from there, do it like that. But at least a chapter every day. Breathe the Lord's word in. Get the word into you, right? And the word tells you that he will work it out in you. He is the builder. He's the architect. He's the carpenter. He's going to build it in you. All right. You just got to have the humility and the trust, right? This ain't blind faith, y'all. Let me tell you, if you're not a believer, let's get this straight right now. God is not a God of blind faith. Don't let anybody tell you that the Christians, they operate on blind faith. God does not do that. You read the Bible, you will find out that whatever God says he's going to do, he backs it up. He backs up whatever he says he's going to do. And anything that, like an example, let's say an example really quick. God wanted Abraham to sacrifice his son on blind faith. No, he did not. No, he did not. God gave Abraham plenty of examples that he's working in his life, not stuff that, I did this. No, God gave him empirical evidence. God gave him material evidence that he is operating in his life. So Abraham didn't take his son up on the hill and get ready to shank him on blind faith. Okay, so if I could give you that encouragement, that don't think that God just wants you to be like just some blind faith person who's operating out of ignorance. No, he does not. You'll be in good hands.
Yeah, good word, Zoe. Good word. And real quick, of course, where can they find you at? Because I know you're all over the place. You're one of the first ones they decide to go after on the internet. Tell us a little bit about where they can find you and where they can see all of your work.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. And thank you for being patient with my rambling, man. I'm at bronzeserpentmedia.com. So if you come there, you can catch my content like the Zoloft, the Zopium Den, which is my anti-fuddy-duddy Bible study, and my music project like Sledge X, which is a dirty sound, but a clean message. And so it's, it's just us playing some rock and roll and rocking the gospel for our Most High King and Priest.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, again, I've been following, been in contact with Zoe for numerous years now, but I've been following his content way back in like the mid 2000s. So, I feel like I know Zoe, like just he is a brother in Christ, but he's also a friend of mine as well. So, Zoe, I appreciate you taking, a half hour every day to sit down and discuss, scripture and discuss things that are impacting Christians in today's world.
Right on, man. Thanks for having me. And thanks for, let's, we'll do it again sometime, and got a kick out of fellowshipping with you and your audience.
Yeah, man, that would be amazing to do. You are, again, I can't say enough good things about you, but he backs up what he says. And so, all right, Zoe. Well, thank you everyone for joining us and joining me and Zoe. I look forward to doing more of these types of conversations, and you'll probably see Zoe down the road again, maybe having a different conversation about something in Scripture that pertains to, Christians, and of course, inviting to hand a fellowship to unbelievers to come in and be part of something that gives you eternal hope and the one and only truth that gets you through everything. All right. Well, I appreciate all of you guys. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys real soon.